whoever it might be. Some things never change. I have a pretty significant addiction to Diet Mountain Dew, so you'll notice that is a common trend amongst the pictures that you'll see. When we first launched, I think we had this messaging. A lot of you will notice this is Grain and Mortar. It's a local design and design firm. We launched this simple messaging, elegant WordPress hosting and management built for designers. Flywheel is a premium WordPress hosting company built specifically for designers, freelancers, and creative agencies. Easily launch and manage clients' websites without the technical mumbo-jumbo of traditional hosts. And you'll see that, and again, a lot of this is around positioning for this bigger idea that the designer, that the person building the sites is the target. It is the client. And why? Because we saw the world as saying, in a world where end users are oftentimes the ones that are buying the hosting or making that decision, the designer, the person in the middle, is really the one who frankly needs the support and needs the product and is the one making the decision. I think that follows a pretty more broad movement. I show this just because, again, for context and because it's kind of fun for me. This is the night that we launched to the public. I think many of you have maybe pulled all-nighters in this regard. This is at about 3 in the morning. When we launched to the public, also, we had a beta fish. We were in beta. His name was Loop. Half the audience will get that joke. The people who will be in here for the rest of the day will get that joke. Loop's a WordPress concept. He was our little beta fish. Loop, ironically and coincidentally, passed away the day that we launched to the public. We pasted this picture on Facebook, and somebody was like, beta fish need way more water. They left this long comment about how beta fish need more water and about how it was blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, it turns out that was true. So we launched with this idea of this convergence of designers and developers, really, this idea of building a platform for designers, which at the time was a pretty unique approach, right? Most hosting companies are very technical. Most hosting companies have pictures of servers on their website. Most hosting companies, don't handle a lot of things for you, at least historically. But we see this really macro-level trend of the idea that designers, who are historically very creative people and not technical, and developers, who are historically very technical and not very creative, are sort of coming together. And WordPress is enabling that in a lot of ways, right? On the designer side, with plugins and with themes, you can build robust, full functioning websites without the need to write code. And on the other side, on the developer side, you have the ability as a developer now, of which I am a developer by trade and couldn't design my way out of a paper bag, you have the ability to launch beautiful websites based either on themes that are available or in concert with somebody who can design, in a way that historically was very, very challenging. And I think that's what we describe as the modern agency in a way, right? The idea that there aren't these silos of designers and developers, but increasingly these things are coming together. So you see this as non-technical people create more sites than ever before. Technical people are able to create WordPress websites that look amazing. And a lot of that is just powered by the things that WordPress gives us, either itself or the ecosystem. And I think that's pretty cool. Again, sort of a core thesis of why we built Flywheel and why we think it's a big opportunity. But a macro-level trend that I would imagine many people in the room are feeling as well. Right? Lots of you are here in part because you don't identify as a developer or designer, but you're sort of somewhere in the middle. Over the years, we've also been to a bunch of WordCamps. How many people have been to WordCamp Omaha before? That's awesome. Maybe a third. So lots of new faces. That's awesome. How many people have never? How many people have never been to a WordCamp ever before? I get excited for you. Yeah, I know. Me too. And it's one of the really neat things about WordPress and the WordPress community that if you haven't been to a WordCamp before, or honestly, if you've only been to Wordcamp Omaha, that you might not have context on, is just how broad and how varied the WordPress community is. And I think this is a pretty cool thing. This is a picture of my co-founder Rick at the first Wordcamp Omaha. I don't know what he's doing, but and we've seen Wordcamp Omaha grow over the years. Flywheel goes to lots of WordCamps, as do lots of companies and that are in our space and that are in the WordPress space broadly. But we travel all over the world for WordCamps. This is, I think, San Francisco several years ago. This is Wordcamp Omaha last year. I believe this is San Antonio, Seattle, New York. And as you see, they sort of like WordCamps happen all over the country. And you may or may not have known that, right? Lots of people I talk to and try and get encouraged to come to WordCamp Omaha might not know that these things happen all over the country and indeed all over the world. But they do, and it's pretty amazing to me because these are small sort of like volunteer-run gatherings that whereby people who are deeply passionate about WordPress or just curious can come together and learn, but also connect with others in a way. These are a picture from Flywheel booth. We love it because it's an opportunity to actually just talk to people who use WordPress. And it's certainly it's a half sales thing, but it's not like being at a conference in a sense, right? It's more talking to people like us, if you will, people who care about the same things that we do, and building and maintaining friendships over the years. And those who have been to WordCamps around the country and world would recognize that you see lots of the same faces and you build pretty deep relationships with people. This is Will. I just like that photo. And I like this photo because this is a Flywheel team carrying some stuff, except for Kyle, who's like texting. I don't know what he's doing while the rest of us do work. If you go to enough WordCamps, or you have enough visibility in this, you realize that there's a massive and growing WordPress community. And you probably feel it. You probably know that WordPress is a big thing, but until you sort of like experience it, it's really you might not have appreciation for it. In one hand, and I went back and looked at the stats, in 2013, about the time that Flywheel started, WordPress powered just shy of 1 in 5 websites, right? 19% of the sites on the internet. Lots of you maybe have heard these statistics before. Today, it's over 28% of the internet. So in 4 years, have increased the sort of market share, if you will, of WordPress by almost 10%. You look at this. The closest competitors are Joomla and Drupal and Blogger and a bunch of others that are sub 1%. And this is what people typically talk about when they talk about the size and the scale of WordPress. When people talk about, like, is WordPress growing, these are the types of things that typically get highlighted. But I like to talk about the broader community, and what's really funny to me, and this is not to scale in any way, but it's if you go to WordCamps, you get a sense for how big the WordPress community is. But the reality is that the number of people who are first-time WordCamp attendees, and the number of people who simply make a living based on WordPress, but have no idea that the community even exists, I think is a real testament to the actual size and scale. Because when you go to WordCamps and you go to a ton of WordCamps, you're like, holy shit, there's a lot of people that love WordPress. If you actually think bigger, like think about the people who don't even know that WordCamp exists, it gives you a real sense for the scale that is happening. I think that's a huge trend. We get a question a lot of like what happens when WordPress goes away, and I'm like WordPress is trending in the right direction. And I think all of you who do work with WordPress should probably feel that as well, right? It's like if you're building sites on the platform, is it something that's going to be around for a long time? I think the strength and sort of vastness of the community really speaks to that in a lot of ways. I also describe it, so WordPress is growing at an incredible rate. One of these macro level trends, right? I would describe it as the pie is growing, the piece of the pie that WordPress has is growing, but also the pie is growing. Like more websites are created every day. So it's not just WordPress taking market share from other people. It's also that they're just the total number of WordPress or of websites is growing, which is really cool. I know that WordPress generally has a goal of hitting 50% of websites in the world created by WordPress, and I think is trending very much in the right direction in that regard. If you look at, so those numbers are blended across all websites. I actually happen to think that the people who build sites for others, designers, agencies, developers, the people that are part of the sort of the first macro level trend that we talked about, I think that those folks, I think, utilize WordPress at a much higher rate, right? If you think about the people who are building sites for others, I think the percentage of them that are using WordPress almost exclusively is greater, and I think that's a really cool thing, right? And like I mentioned, lastly, I think the total size of the community, certainly of WordCamp attendees, is dwarfed by the just total number of users and people around the globe using WordPress just to make a living or just for fun. Got to feed my addiction. Sorry. And so lastly, I think as we think about here, the last sort of like trend that we'll talk about is sort of like maintaining a focus on the designer. These are some comments that we get from Flywheel, to Flywheel, that I wanted to sort of highlight, that kind of like talk about the topic that I'm going to talk about. So just want to say thanks for all your help in switching to Flywheel. I know it's been a long time. I'm glad we finally got the ball rolling. And from my end, you didn't just make a sale, you made my job way easier. You see a common sort of trend here. A while back, we switched our WordPress hosting services over to them, Flywheel, and haven't looked back. Simply we've transformed the way we do business because they're the best in the game. They save their countless hours and headaches. They have always got our backs, and they also make rad pins. I think the takeaway here is they've transformed the way we do business. And again, it sounds like a sales pitch, but I swear it's not. Great visiting with our partners at Flywheel. Thank you for helping us scale our company. And what I want to sort of talk about is this freelance economy idea. This is an early customer of Flywheel. And the focus on the designer is a lot for Flywheel, and I think generally about this idea that how do you enable people to make a living or transform their business using WordPress and allowing them to, in a sense, focus on what they do best. This is an example. Jamie Mays is a single mom from Athens, Georgia, full-time freelance web designer, signed up for Flywheel very, very early on. Now manages something like 43 sites and launches a bunch each month. And I bring this up because, there are millions of Jamie Mays around the world. There are dozens in this room of people who utilize WordPress to either supplement their income or to make a full-time living on it. And I think that is incredibly powerful in the sense, not just certainly for Flywheel, but I think generally as well. And I think any technology that has the community support and the ability for people to make a living or to feed their families, I think is really pretty cool. Because all of these designers have this sort of thing, these types of things in common, right? They trade time for money, right? They're doing project-based work. They want to focus on what they love doing, and they want to grow their business. And WordPress allows them to do that. Flywheel helps, but WordPress is really the thing that enables and empowers that, right? They couldn't do it if they didn't have the ability, the robust sort of ecosystem of plugins and themes. They couldn't do it if there wasn't the robust network of people that could help them if they have issues. All of these sorts of things. But this sort of trend in the WordPress world of being able to enable this, I think is really, really powerful, right? Allowing them to live almost entirely, in many cases, based on the work that they do in design and development, and allowing them to focus on what they do best, whether it's design, or development, or building, or working with clients, content. It's varied but pretty exciting. And so those are the three big things: the freelance economy, right? The idea that freelancers, WordPress empowers freelancers, the overall growth of WordPress, and the convergence of designers and developers. Sort of gotten away from the Flywheel story a little bit. I didn't quite know. I sort of get excited and plugged into these sort of like ideas and big things. So I'm just going to show pictures of Flywheels for a little bit. This is the Flywheel team growth over the last year and a half. And also this is my partner getting a tattoo of the Flywheel logo, which I like showing. He lost a bet. And also the best part is we rebranded like 2 weeks later. And so I feel bad about that. But I told him he should just give V1 next to it and then get the new logo with V2 on it. This is Flywheel today. Actually, we're about 100 people. We're located here in Omaha. And we have a real goal of supporting and helping to build the WordPress community and world by sort of making a dent in our small way. The things that you see, like these macro level trends, right? Designers and developers converging, WordPress growing at an incredible rate, and the growth of the freelance economy. These are the driving things for us. But I think they should be the things that they are the things that everybody in this room sort of lives in a way. Right? If you are working with WordPress in any capacity, there is some overlap and some sort of touch points on these three concepts. And I think keeping in the back of your mind, sort of WordPress isn't just a tool in that regard, right? It isn't just like how my website works. It's a lot bigger than that in, I think, a really cool way, and it is enabling some really, really powerful and cool things to happen in the world. So where do we go from here? Like, where does WordPress go? I get this question a lot. It's like, what do you see as the future of WordPress in a lot of ways? And I don't think about like I'm not like a soothsayer in any way. So these are pretty practical in any way. But I do think there's a more focus on tools, and Flywheel certainly participates in this. Right? The idea that making the lives easier of people who are building websites. I think there's an opportunity. Hold on, please. Oops, no. Oh, golly. Oh, God. More focus on tools. I think there's an opportunity for improved UX. You see a lot of effort on the actual software of WordPress itself, but I think even outside of that, there's a big opportunity for like, just what's the experience of using it. I always describe it as like, it should just work. And I think that for a long time, there's been a lot of sort of fiddling and needing to install and do lots of things. And I think as platforms mature, the risk that they get more complicated and sort of more kludgy is real. But with a real focus on user experience, both on the actual software and the experience of using it broadly, I think that you can make major steps forward. And I think that that's a trend that we're seeing not only from WordPress itself, right, the foundation and the organization that builds it, but but also the providers and the sort of participants in the ecosystem. And I think that's pretty cool. I don't know what. Hold on, please. And lastly, continued growth. Right, the idea that that WordPress is growing and taking, kind of like taking over the world in a way, is exciting for me, and I think it should be exciting for anybody who sort of participates in the ecosystem in any way. You see that the trend continues year over year, and I think that's mostly in part due to, frankly, the people in this room that participate in that community, that build sites, that educate clients, that write content, that do all of the things that help build and accelerate the growth of a community. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about WordPress for me. It's not the fact that it's the biggest. It's not the fact that it's growing. It's the fact that it's growing like that in large part because of the people in this room. So, remember back to the beginning, and the picture of the growth of sort of this represents for me a lot. For those who were at the first Wordcamp Omaha, it was, I don't know how many people was there, but I don't know, maybe half the number of that are in here. And to see the growth of the WordPress community in Omaha, I think is really exciting. And so it's my pleasure to sort of welcome you today. I've enjoyed getting the chance to speak with you just for a short period of time here. Enjoy your time at WordCamp, learn a lot, ask questions, participate, and have a great day. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions. I know we got lots of time. No, you're fine, unless Scott wants to take questions. He's welcome to. Any questions from anybody? Yes, sir.
Nerd question. Are you planning on releasing staging environments for multi-site deployments?
Staging, yes, good question. Staging sites for multi-sites. Yes, asterisk. So the, yeah, so staging on multi-site. So Flywheel provides a staging environment. It has some limitations, and those limitations are largely in part due to the complexity of multi-sites and some other things there. But yes, I mean, like our goal, and as we look at tools of it, like broadly, I mean, this is an example of when I talk about the future of WordPress and tools enabling sort of the acceleration of the growth of the community. What's really interesting is that multi-site is really pretty complicated in a way. But there's not really any reason why, other than the tools don't exist, that you couldn't have staging sites on multi-site. It just takes work on the part of companies like ours or others to actually sort of make those things happen. And so, and if you do that, right, if you fill that gap, now you've got the ability to, again, sort of focus on other things rather than having to spend, half a day worrying about or trying to figure out how to handle things like staging on multi-site. So, so the answer is like yes, absolutely. Like from a sort of a vision and mission perspective, those are the types of problems that we really aim to solve, and we look to solve it. Like we look to solve them for all the reasons that we mentioned. Right? We want people to. I think for a long time, again, you had to like tinker in order to get these things to work, and we have a vision that I think is broadly in line with the greater community about sort of like making it just work. So yes, asterisk. On what time frame, I don't know, because it's a hard problem. Yes?
One of the questions I get from clients that set up the Flywheel is that they want to have their personalized images. And a lot of hosting companies provide that, like their name, at their company. I know that's not currently a feature. What is your current solution to that? And is that something, I know it's very minor, but clients.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's questions about email hosting, and other hosting providers provide it, and what's the solution, and what's our sort of thesis on that. So when we started Flywheel, we aim to be an exceptional WordPress host, sort of period. And the way by which we feel that we can do that is to specialize, right? Sort of like the idea of being a best of breed provider, that we we can do this exceptionally, and we know that we can be experts at it. We know that it's going to work really well, and we know that we can help you if you have a problem. And in order to do that, you have to make decisions on what you aren't, in a way. And especially in a world where there's exceptional providers who do that as well. And for us, that's Google and Gmail. It's our number one recommendation. It's what we use internally. It's what I would recommend to everybody. Email is like the thing I use most in the day. So, $5 a month or whatever it is, compared to what I spend on soda or red wine, is nothing. And so so that's the kind of the core thesis of it, is the idea that we want to be a best-of-breed provider for WordPress hosting, and that we want to recommend other best-of-breed providers for things like email, especially mission-critical things like email. And so we believe that that is the sort of best way to handle it. There's lots of groups in the world that want to sort of handle everything, and so there's pros and cons to that. But our belief is really that we want to do the things that we can be exceptional at. Yes.
Any tips on how to sell clients a more expensive hosting plan, knowing they get a lot more when they can Google online and see $2 a month for hosting, and how to explain it to someone who knows nothing about kind of the tech talk, I guess?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So how to sell, $15 or $30 a month hosting instead of $1.25 a month hosting. It's a really good question. So I think that one of the reasons Flywheel likes to work with the designer, and I think one of the reasons why we build relationships with our clients, the designers or the people building sites, is because they're the trusted resource, right? They're the ones that are making the recommendation, and I think from the outset, because of that, you have a leg up. If we were to come in and say directly to your client, say you should pay us $30 instead of $1, I think that we'd have a harder time. You're in a position to be able, as the expert, to be able to say, listen, here's all of the reasons why this is valuable for you. It's a security issue, it's performance, it's support, and it's a specialization in what you actually do. And then frankly, at the end of the day, it's peace of mind to know that this thing, which is the front page of your business, it's the thing that all of your clients come to, and they see, do you want to, what is that worth to you in a sense? We started Flywheel years ago because we would build websites for clients, and we would literally charge $20,000 to design and build a website, and then we would put it on $2 a month hosting. And so you would have a law firm who would pay $20,000, made up number, but a big number, right? And then they'd be like, where should we host it? And we would say, I don't know, over here. And the quality of the design and the development didn't match the sort of like the caliber of the hosting didn't match the caliber of the design and development. And the law firm didn't care what it cost, right? Like they just want there to not be like Russian spam on their website when they wake up in the morning. And so I think that's sort of the way that we often describe it. I know there's lots of people that are price sensitive on those things, but there's anybody who, we get a lot of people that come to Flywheel after they get hacked, like after they paid $2 a month and then they had a poor experience, they come to us. And so, you get a lot of that as well, which is like the way that you should pay more is that you had a bad experience. And I think that, but I do think there's something very real about the designer being the expert, right? Like this is my recommendation, and I think that that can go an awful long way, to sort of just sort of take a position of saying, listen, I'm the expert. You pay me for my opinion. You pay me for my opinion on design. You pay me for my opinion on this. My very strong recommendation is this, and also it's $15 a month. I'm going to drink more soda today than that.
Justin, can I make a comment about that?
Please.
So I don't know if you know, but at the beginning of Google started a policy that if your site's not SSL, you can ding your results, and next year Well, SSL and Flywheel just happens. They use the best system. It's on their thing to make it all work. But it just works, and it's one of the best systems called Let's Encrypt, and it's part of the industry saying, this is crap to have to go do a certificate. Well, that's Flywheel. They took all care of that for it. And it's like, okay, so you want SSL, you turn on a little switch at Flywheel. And that's how hard SSL is done. Okay. Anybody who's done computer systems for any length of time, you'd like to have staging. So that I'm out there running an e-commerce site that's generating me about $10,000, $20,000 a day. I don't want to take it offline too long. I don't ever want to take it offline. So Flywheel comes up with this concept called staging, which is you just pull and copy a thing, it's like a backup, and you can do this to other sites, you can back it up and then create a new template. You just go to switch and say, oh, I like the staging site. But they can go even better. Then you use that free tool they have, local, which you put down on your computer, and you connect that up to staging site, and then you can bang away on your PC, not having any understanding of what the hell it did to Windows. And then when you're done, you just say, oh, I'd like to load it up my staging site, check it out, looks good, and then you, what is promotion, you throw a little switch, and the staging site moves into production. That's the way real website, that's the way the New York Times does their production. Try that on other hosting services.
At the risk of it becoming a Flywheel commercial, there's lots of hosts that provide that type of functionality as well. But I agree. I'm an advocate for sort of the quality matching sort of the outcome, and like Flywheel is one example of that. But I think that there's lots of value wrapped up into the things that we and others do at our level that I very much think is worth the money. Yes, sir.
You handle the delta in the database from the time you start your restaging to the time you
The question is about how do you handle the difference between the database at the time at which you take a staging snapshot and when you push it to production. The answer with regards to us is that database pushes are all or nothing. It's sort of like my yes asterisk question or answer, which is those are really fun but challenging problems to be solved, right? If you think about staging in the world of WordPress, what does that mean? Well, we host tens of thousands of websites, and the use cases are so varied because some people would say like, yeah, push the whole database, I don't care, because they don't actually make meaningful content changes. And then others who do, or it's e-commerce, or it's something where you have issues. And so those are hard product problems, and those are hard sort of tool problems that we get really excited about solving. And I know there's lots of others in the ecosystem as well. There's lots of great plugins and also services to provide that type, like increased functionality in that way. But yeah, those are the things that are the things that we think about a lot, because they are hard problems that we think can be solved with product, right? And we say, like, we're not just a hosting, I always describe ourselves as a software company that happens to host websites. And I think that, we think about those types of things, but, and we'll get there, sort of moving in that direction. But that staging is a big one in that regard. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So when you guys started Flywheel, you had a pretty clear vision and picture, or dream, I'll call it. As you've grown, which your pictures show, how do you keep that dream and vision really clear for your team as it grows?
Yeah, so the question is about how do you keep the sort of vision and dream as you grow from 3 guys in a garage to where we are today. I can't speak for other companies in this way, but for us, my partners and I, we worked together for many years. We have a very shared sense of what that vision is. If you notice the website, our original website with grain and mortar in the background, how we talk about ourselves today hasn't changed dramatically since then. Like, we've stayed pretty in line with that. We're a little more broad than that these days, but on the same sort of general path. That starts very much at the top with myself and my partners, and that sort of we came from that world, which is the other piece of it for me. And I like, if anybody in the room's like has an inkling of an idea around starting a company someday, like my absolute advice is do something that you actually like is something that you actually care about and that you are that you've experienced the pain in a way? Because for us, it's that. And so, you know, we have experienced the pain of building websites, or certainly, you know, 8 years ago. And so that's, you know, solving those problems are the things, sort of the beacon on the hill that we set. And we continue to reiterate that as the team grows. How you do that more broadly at a team of 100 versus, you know, when it's 10 people in a room, it's really easy for everybody to be aligned. You know, how you do that for 100 people is like a topic for another day. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Our team's really excited about the whole white label feature it's going to be coming about. I don't know if you could provide any insight into what that may look like. I know it's kind of behind the curtains right now.
Yeah, questions about white label at Flywheel. So I'll talk more broadly, again, in the context of just the world, not maybe specific to Flywheel. But, you know, kind of as I mentioned, there's a real opportunity in the WordPress world, I think, for there to be improved tools and workflows, so that if I'm a designer, that I can focus on what I do best, that I can more easily create maybe recurring revenue to support my family or myself or whatever it might be. I think in line with the idea of the freelance economy, and in line with the idea that designers should be able to focus on what they do best, you know, we think about products that fit into that mold. And so being able to white label hosting, as an example, is a big component of that, and is sort of forthcoming at Flywheel. But there's lots of things that are like that. So white label, we can talk about it offline. But you know, it is a piece of the bigger picture puzzle that, again, is I think in a way Flywheel is just sort of riding the trend, right? This is not Flywheel's, like, it happens to overlap with what Flywheel cares about, but I think it overlaps with what Flywheel cares about because it is a big trend that we see in the market. And I think we will wake up in 5 years and the tools that are available, the way that they've advanced has sort of dramatically outpaced the way it has been over the course of the last, let's say, 10 years. Like when I was developing websites with my partners, Rick and Tony, years ago, if we were trying to white label or resell what we were doing because we wanted to make recurring revenue, it would have been incredibly hard. And in fact, it was so hard that we just didn't do it. And we joke a lot, if we had just charged a recurring fee for every website we developed 10 years ago, we'd be millionaires. And so just because it was sort of like money left on the table. And so the tools, I think, will advance, and we want to play a role in that, certainly. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Some of our clients have concerns when it comes to WordPress as far as security goes, and we've had problems in the past with other hosts and providers with getting hacked constantly and things like that, but we've never had a problem with Flywheel before, so I was just curious as to how you guys handle those potential security issues.
Yeah, the questions around security and how do we handle it, and like clients, having problems in the past. Again, I'll speak broadly about it. The way that we think about it is kind of to the point of specialization in a way, is that the way in which we handle it is to be experts at WordPress, right? To be experts at WordPress security, to configure things only for WordPress. And I think that that is the number one thing from a security perspective, because I think depending on where your site lives, if there isn't that specialization, then the opportunity for sort of like bad things to happen goes up pretty dramatically. And so, without sort of the specifics, it's a lot of that. It's just saying, like, listen, and this is the value in a lot of ways, right? The value is that because of the specialization, you are at lower risk for these sorts of things, right? No host, no plugin, no nothing can block 100% of things, but you're at lower risk overall, I think, than you might be elsewhere. And so that's the number one and the biggest thing. Sort of like down from that, there's lots of like very technical things that go on behind the scenes that enable that. And also down from that is just our belief that a client site should just work, right? And so, when a client emails us, and also a recognition that if you're the designer and you call us because a client site got hacked, that it's because your client is yelling at you. Like, your client's yelling at you and you're yelling at us. And we have a great sort of empathy for that. And our goal is to get it back online, right? The idea is that, if somebody calls us and says, I have but my client site is down, it's a white screen of death or whatever, and it's never been our position to sort of like point fingers. It's always been our position to get your client site back online. And oftentimes that requires digging in pretty deep, and oftentimes that requires cleaning up malware, and oftentimes that requires other things. And but I think, again, part of the value and from us and others like us in the space is that because of the specialization, we can both fend off things on the outset, but also take care of things when things go wrong in a much sort of deeper way. And so that's generally it. Again, behind the scenes, there's a ton of like stuff that's way above my pay grade that goes on, but at a high level, that's how we think about it. Other things, questions? Oh, one more question. Oh, two more questions, real quick.
How do you for I guess your data or the sites that you host, how do you handle high availability? And I guess are you hosting that in the cloud with Azure, AWS, or something like that, or how are you supporting that?
Yeah, so the question is around high availability, specifically at Flywheel. I'll talk to you offline about that. We can talk. So that's a big topic, and happy if anybody else is interested, you can find me in the hallway. We can talk about that. But that's more than I think. Scott would be mad at me if I went into that one. Last question, right up here. Do we restrict the kinds of plugins that our clients use? Yes, asterisk. And so our job in lots of ways is to protect our clients from themselves. And so, so yes, we do. And also there's as I talked earlier about like platforms evolving and tools evolving, there's a real trend, I think, and Flywheel is a part of this certainly, where there are large pieces of functionality that we provide totally for free. Well, not totally for free. You pay for it, I guess. But included in the cost, that doesn't make sense to be duplicated. So the biggest category of plugins that we restrict are things like backup plugins, security plugins, caching plugins, because we handle all of that for you. And they tend to interfere and cause more problems than good. And so that's the biggest piece. The other is that, and part of being an expert in WordPress sites, is as sites scale, plugins oftentimes aren't built to be able to handle that. They work really well if you get no traffic. They work really, really the opposite of well if you get lots. And so helping our customers through that is part of the value that we provide. And in lots of cases, that means helping clients delete plugins. Yes. So that's all I have. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stick around in the hallway. I'll be around. I can talk about Flywheel or the future of WordPress or whatever you'd like. Have fun at WordCamp. Learn lots. Meet new folks. And thanks for having me.